Abomination. In the first chapter of A Dance with Dragons, the word echoes through a dying man's ears. Abomination. An eternal reminder of the worst sins a skin changer can commit. Abomination. The greatest expression of a warg's powers inflicts the greatest toll on their conscience and on the mind of their victim. Dance's prologue chapter is viewed through the eyes of a character never seen on HBO, Varamir Sixskins. He's a wildling, one who used his magical might as a force to elevate himself to the status of a lord beyond the wall. His gifts are the strongest we've seen in the series thus far, but he's reached the limits of his power. The magic of the Red God caused him to flee from battle at the wall, leaving him despondent, injured, and alone. The story of Varamir Sixskins is the story of a murderer and a monster, but one that's incredibly useful for analyzing A Song of Ice and Fire and its characters. It's easy to miss if all you've seen is the TV show, but every single one of the Stark children, including Jon Snow, exhibit the gift of skin changing. Varamir specifically notes that Jon is one of the strongest wargs he's ever encountered, even having met with councils of exclusively skin changers. Today, I'm going to be examining the darkest sins a skin changer can commit, where we've seen them in the story so far, and what an old warg's guidance might tell us about the future of the Starks and the winds of winter. Skin changing has an interesting history in A Song of Ice and Fire. While the scene of the Stark children finding their direwolves is famously the first scene that ever came to George R. R. Martin, the specifics of these children's magical bond with their pets was not yet determined. The lore of skin changing and of warging seems to be a slightly later addition to the series. And by later, I mean 1998 instead of 1996. Warging isn't mentioned until Clash of Kings, showing that the full system of magic might not have been fully developed beyond dragons and others in Martin's original vision for the series as a trilogy. It's clear that there's some deeper connection between Starks and their wolves in the first novel, but nothing so direct as Bran, Arya, and Jon consistently tapping into the minds of their pets in later novels. We learn throughout the course of the series that there are essentially two levels to skin changing, conscious and unconscious. Unconscious warging seems to be the easier method. One need only have the gift, as it's called by Varamir, and a bond with an animal. This is something lost in translation to the television adaptation. Bran does still have wolf dreams, but it seems as though he's the only Stark who maintains their strong psychic link with their direwolf. Being in each of these characters' heads in the books tells quite a different tale than what we saw on TV. Wolf dreams occur for every Stark viewpoint with a living direwolf. Sorry, Sansa and Lady, at some point in the story. Bran is dreaming through Summer's eyes as early as the second book. Jon Snow senses ghosts return to the wall at the end of A Storm of Swords via connecting to his beast in a dream. At the current point in the story, Arya has by far the most wolf dreams. She's separated from Nymeria very early in the series and currently stands a continent away, but the pair still share a strong subconscious bond. It's Nymeria that finds Catelyn Stark's body, retrieving her from the river of the twins and allowing her to be raised as Lady Stoneheart. Dreams of Nymeria serve as Arya's only vestige of her old identity, when she's being depersonalized by the faceless men in Braavos. As while no one sleeps, the Wolf Girl watches Nymeria form a massive pack of smaller wolves in the Riverlands. It's worth noting that we're not in the heads of two of the Starks. Robb and Rickon don't have any chapters, in the former case because Martin didn't want a king to be a viewpoint, in the latter case because he's literally 4 years old. With that said, both have strong bonds with their wolves. Robb and Greywind regularly ride to battle together and are rarely far apart. Robb's last words are Greywind, and a major part of the Red Wedding is getting this massive wolf away from the king in order to be able to kill him at all. Rickon's been chilling on Skagos with Shaggy Dog for a couple years at this point, and in an early unearthed draft of A Feast for Crows, Jon sees the pair dining on a unicorn together, brought down by the massive hunter and his wolf. While readers see these abilities in action through the young Starks, we don't receive any deeper lore or guidance into their inner workings until the prologue chapter of A Dance with Dragons. Varamir Sixskins, our viewpoint character here, is much more adept with his gifts, despite acknowledging that Jon Snow is likely naturally stronger in his warging abilities. When he was young, a wolf he controlled killed his younger brother, causing Varamir's father to drop him off at Magic Possession School, where he studied under an older skin changer named Hagen. Verimir notes that there were meetings of skin changers north of the wall, many of whom possess different varieties of animals: a boar, an eagle, a shadow cat, or a goat. Verimir learns that individuals tend to take on traits of the animals with which they share a bond, and that some animals are more difficult to control than others. While these meetings sound fascinating, the primary lesson that lingers in Varamir's thoughts comes from Hagen himself. Time and time again, the Elder Skin Changer outlined three of the worst sins a warg could commit. Abominations, he called them. To eat the flesh of man was an abomination. To mate as beast with beast was an abomination. And to seize the body of another man was the worst abomination of all. Hagen urged his pupil away from these sins, yet Verimir would commit all three abominations in time. The first two have become fairly commonplace for him, but the last only occurs in his final moments, as our prologue chapter ends with the warg attempting to steal the body and life of a spearwife named Thistle. Abomination is an evocative, striking term, one that stuck with me since my first read of the novels in 2016, and it has a few other notable uses in A Song of Ice and Fire. Many of the other instances of this term occurring all revolve around incest, usually in reference to the bastards born of Cersei Lannister and Jaime Lannister. In another instance, slavery is discussed as an abomination in the culture of the Seven Kingdoms. A through line can be drawn between all possible abominations, and I believe they tie into the distant past of Westeros, long before the Iron Throne or even the Seven Gods. It's my belief that the term abomination reflects those acts viewed as the worst possible crimes by the first men or even the children of the forest before them. Ice and fire are constantly mirrored in this story. In the icy civilization of the first men and the children, viewing slavery and incest as abomination, act as a direct inverse of the fiery Valyrian Empire, built on the back of both of those dark practices. It would make sense then that the term abomination is also tied into skin changing. This gift is characteristic of the first men, as all known skin changers in our story claim some descent from this ancient population. While some of these societal taboos are adopted into the laws of Westeros, the more obscure abominations are left to oral tradition of skin changers beyond the wall. And the isolation of information resulting from this instance yields dangerous results for all parties involved in this magic. We all know that the real abomination is not liking the video and subscribing to Quinn the GM, of course. Also, feel free to comment, that helps as well. Goodbye, I'm trying not to break tone. Young Brandon Stark serves as a cautionary tale as to the limitation of maintaining rules and taboos through exclusively oral tradition. Bran is clearly a warg, and his abilities begin to awaken at a fairly young age. While his gift is very powerful, wargs are essentially extinct south of the Wall. He receives guidance on how to hone his abilities from Bloodraven and from Jojen, but he doesn't have an ethics seminar on mind control. This leads to Bran committing two of the three abominations, including the worst of all, accidentally and completely on his own without knowing how wrong they are. Bran's control of Hodor is one of the most horrifying things to happen in the entire series. Particularly, at one point in A Dance with Dragons, Bran talks about the stable boy resisting, and then going away inside himself while Bran takes control. That language has always just horrified me. One purpose of the Varamir prologue is to explicitly draw attention to the immorality of this practice. Bran is focused on improving his magical abilities, on walk again, on flying, but he's only 8 years old, and has very little frame of reference as to which magical acts are right or are wrong. His only remaining mentor in this arena is a century-old kinslaying and war crimes enthusiast who supposedly used his skin-changing gift to create a secret police spy network. These taboos were put in place for a reason, and without the free folk and their history, this power will undoubtedly be used for evil, as Bloodraven did. With that said, Varamir does know about these abominations and still undertakes them regardless. There's one other piece of Skinchanger lore discussed in A Dance with Dragons prologue that's one introduced to the reader in the third book. Upon Varamir's introduction to Jon Snow in A Storm of Swords, we learn that he's gained possession of an eagle once owned by a deceased Skinchanger, Orell. He explains the concept of a skin changer's second life to Jon. That once a man's flesh dies, he lives on within his beast. It happened to Orell, and we feel his hatred through Varamir. It happened to Hagen, and we see it happen to Varamir. He attempts to seize control of the wildling woman Thistle, and she manages to resist him and dies in the attempt. With both humans dead, Varamir's consciousness remains in the oldest and largest of his three wolves, One Eye. The concept of a second life becomes vital to our story when considering the end of Jon Snow's arc in A Dance with Dragons. If you read between the lines, it's incredibly clear why Martin focused so much on this concept in Dance's prologue. Varamir states that Jon's direwolf ghost would be a second life worthy of a king. Melisandre has visions of Jon as a man, then a wolf, then a man again. Jon is stabbed to death, or close to it, by his Night's Watch brothers, and his last word is ghost. Jon Snow is going to live his second life in Ghost, before his body will eventually be restored via some sort of magical means. We know that being in an animal's skin changes a warg, so the Jon that returns from Ghost may be quite different from the boy we knew before. Circling back to the prologue, Thistle resisting Varamir's influence on her mind feels significant. Even though she was weakened by starvation and fully devoted to Varamir, he still couldn't overpower her mind. This really speaks to the magical link between Bran and Hodor. Either Bran is much more powerful than Varamir, or there's something else at play. I do think Bran is more powerful than Varamir, but I don't think that's the main issue here. Varamir remarks that once a skin changer has controlled a creature at one point, it's easy to do it again. Bran being able to control Hodor so easily could speak to the nature of his condition, confirming Hold the Door's time-traveling nature in the books. Bran can warg this poor stablehand so easily because he's already done it, both in the past and in the future. Magic in A Song of Ice and Fire is a sword with no hilt. There's no safe way to grasp it. Warging is no different. It's powerful, but it's incredibly dangerous. There's no such thing as good magic here. Everything has its cost. To control other creatures means to warp oneself, even to the point of giving up portions of one's soul for the sole purpose of controlling another human. To do so is to become an abomination. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about Abomination or what role skin changing might play in the story for the future. I thought it'd be fun to do a little bit of a spookier video for the Halloween season. I don't think this will date the video too much, but yeah, I figured it'd be fun if I could speak. I hope you enjoyed. I'll be back with many more videos in the near future. And yeah, thank you again for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, that stuff. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.